Hello, welcome to the Business Math, Business 210. This is Dr. Jeff Holm, and this is the first lecture, first topic in the series of lecture in Business Math. So our first topic is simple interest. Now, when we say simple interest, right, that means that already implies that there is not only simple interest, but some other type of interest, right? Yes. Actually, there are two ways the interests are earned, right? In depending on which type of financial market you're in. Now, when I say which type of financial markets, I'm simply referring to the maturity, right? The nature of maturity. Now, first of all, let's make some distinction, okay? When I say interest, that means dollar interest, okay? That means, interest in dollars, right? So, in other words, interest and I will use INT for symbol for interest. So this is the result of, let's say, you put $10,000 in the bank, right? And 1 year later, and if interest rate is 10%, 1 year later, there will be $11,000 in your bank account. So what does that mean? Since interest rate is 10%, right? Right, and I will use R, lowercase r, for the symbol for interest rate. Interest is simply what? Principal times, you arrived at $1,000 because you multiplied 10,000 by the interest rate, right? And is that all? No, actually you put it there for 1 year, okay? And since, and T stands for time in year, right? T stands for time in year. So R, rate, stands for interest rate, which is the annual percentage rate, right? So we know we don't have to write this anymore because it is 1, right? So we know interest is $1,000 or 1K. Okay. Now, however, if you put your money for 2 years, what's it going to be? What's the interest going to be? Because it is 2 years, right? If you plug in 2 there, right? And we all understand interest for 2 years will be $2,000. Make sense? It's not that difficult, right? Then if T is 3 years, then interest is going to be $3,000, and so on. So if time is n years, right? N is just any number, right? I'll have to make ellipsis here. If time is n years, all you need to do is, this is going to be P times R times N. P times R times N. Okay? So it's easy. It's not difficult to understand. Then this brings us back to our my first question. I said, depending on the financial market. When I say financial market, yeah, the lending, and borrowing, it refers to the market where you can borrow money or lend money, borrow or lend money, right? Of course, usually you do it with the bank, right? You borrow money from the bank and you lend money to the bank. And you might wonder, how do I lend money to the bank? I'm not that rich. Look, you don't have to be rich. Think about it, whenever you're putting your money in the bank, passively you are lending to the bank and the bank is borrowing from you passively, right? You didn't realize it, but it is, technically, right? You're lending, even if it is just, $100. You're lending. When you're making a deposit, you're passively lending to the bank, and the bank is passively borrowing from you, right? Of course, the bank doesn't pay something like 10%, right? The reality is that the bank isn't even paying like 0.1% on your deposit annually. And one more thing, always remember, interest rate is always expressed as APR, right? Interest rate is always annual percentage rate. There is no interest rate that is expressed as 10-day interest rate or 30-day interest rate. There is no such thing. All the interest rates are expressed as annual. And if the next question is, so if you are only borrowing for 30 days, well, you only need to make an adjustment, isn't that right? If the annual interest rate is 10%, and if you're borrowing only for 30 days, then all you need to do is, because 30 days is, in fraction of year, right? Think about it. 30 over 365. Isn't that right? That's the fraction of 30 days in a year. And all you need to do is just multiply annual interest rate, right? 10% by 30 over 365. Makes sense? So no interest rate is quoted in any other way, but just always as APR, right? Makes sense? Now, second, so the concept of financial market, right? I said there are two types of financial markets. One is called capital market, and the other one is called money market. So what's the difference? Well, it depends on the maturity. Capital market is the situation, the financial market, where you lend or borrow for long term. That means that money market, automatically, that makes money market a situation or financial market where you borrow and lend for short term. Then what's the difference? What defines long term and short term? Well, it's the time, basically, the line between the long term and short term is drawn on 1 year. So anything that has longer maturity than 1 year, it's long term. Anything with shorter maturity than 1 year is short term. Okay? And in the way the interest rate is the way the interest is calculated, right? The way that I showed you, right? This is called the simple interest rate. Simple interest rate. In other words, interest rate is simply principal. Interest is simply principal times rate times the time. This is called the simple interest, right? Um, but again, then if time is 1, 2, 3 years, 4 years, then that's clearly short term, that's long term. And I told you the simple interest is used only in the short term financial market, short term or money market. Okay, so this cannot happen in the short term financial market. This will be the case of long term financial market. And in the long term market or capital market, uh, you don't use simple interest rate. You don't use simple interest rate. You use compound interest rate. Okay. So we're gonna compound interest rate will be the next topic. So uh, we're not we're gonna talk about only the simple interest um, in this lecture, and then we will pretend. I mean, although in reality, if you are borrowing or lending for like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, uh, this is not the way it is going to be calculated, but we will pretend as if even in the long term financial market, uh, we still use, we will pretend that we still use simple interest rate, simple interest rate, simple interest method. Okay, all right. Then let's go to the first example. Um, so before, okay, let me. Oh, that's great. So I'll have to. Okay. Um, to do this exercise, let me clear out all the highlighted cells. And these highlighted cells, you would find some are yellow and some are olive green or light. What do you call that? Drab, or the color. This is like light military color, military uniform color. Olive, right? Light olive. So, is there a meaning to these colors? Yes, these colors have meanings. The yellow is uh, the solution cell, right? Yellow is the solution cell. The uh, drab or olive green, olive, light olive is the intermediate solution, intermediate or secondary solution. Now, first, let's make some concepts. Let's define some concepts. First of all, now think about it. If you put your $10,000 for 1 year at 10% interest rate, you know the interest will be $1,000. Okay? 1 year later, you will have how much in your bank account? You'll have $11,000 or 11K in your bank account, right? So that 11K is called future value. Okay, makes sense. Uh, so future value is basically principal plus interest, right? Okay. I put I'm using, I will express interest in dollar interest as I, or uppercase I, or INT. Now, but we all know what how interest is calculated. We all understand that interest is, what is interest? We already did that there, right? Interest is defined as its own definition. The definition of interest is principal times R times T, right? Now, so, and what do we do? When you see, uh, basically, math doesn't like, you'll understand, math doesn't like redundancy, right? And it's also not just math, all official documents, legal documents, technical documents, based on the same principle. Minimum redundancy. I mean, no redundancy, zero redundancy if possible. But if not possible, at least minimal redundancy, right? Everything has to be concise and terse, right? No unnecessary verbiage, right? Just, lengthy verbiage is, it's the sign of, mental weakness, intellectual weakness, right? Just keeping on, of course, when you are speaking, it's inevitable. Nobody can speak in a terse, concise term, right? Because in actual verbal communication, you may have to repeat the same thing over and over until the other party, which is called interlocutor, the other party speaking, right? Until the other party completely understands. Sometimes you omit a lot of things, but at least in written language, right? Uh, you know, um, redundant verbiage, makes the statement, uh, unnecessarily lengthy and verbose, right? And that is, absolute no in any, official document, right? Or in any written language, right? Uh, and that principle is more, there is nothing, that where, this principle is more evident, right, than in math, right? It all starts from math, all these um, rules about parsimony, right? Using the, it means, economical use of resources, right? Yeah. So to make this, I mean, all P and P appearing in both terms is redundant, right? So you understand we need to simplify it, and simplifying means, factoring out the common factor. And if you factor out the common factor, it becomes P, open parenthesis, 1 plus R times T, okay? And then this is the future value, right? So if you redistribute P, you will get back to this, right? Now, so let's go to an example, right? First, So this is basically the process that I explained here, right? The same process, right? So first, let's find the interest. The principal is $600. Interest rate is 18% time 25 years. What's the interest? All you need to do is simply, now, don't forget to start with the equal sign, because what does this mean? The label is interest, right? That means then this cell must, this cell is the cell of the interest, right? This column is the column of interest. That's what the label is saying, okay? Now, maybe you are, because you are watching this video, you may not be, able to do it simultaneously. But look, you can pause the video, right? And this file is in the same folder, right? Our first, if you go into the, it's a very, obvious. It's very obvious that when you look into the course materials folder, then there are topics, there are subfolders in each topic, right? You go into those folders and you find this file. This is an Excel file, it's on top. I mean, the first two files, the first one is the PDF file of the lecture, and then second file would be the Excel file. And if you download it, and you can follow this exercise in your own time, at your own pace, and you watch the video through, and you can do it later. But if you want to do it together with this video, then pause the video and follow. Okay, so now so the interest is literally P times R times T. So because P is in A8, right? Interest rate is in B8. But look, some people may be trying to enter manually A8, right? B8. No, you can simply use your mouse and click them in, right? Right? Select the cell and click it in. Click it in, left click, right? And there you go. Okay, so this is the interest. And then what's going to be the future value? 25 years later, right? We understand future value is principal plus interest. That's what, the clue is there. So all you need to do is, okay, this is the principal and interest. Oops, that's just a principal. That's not A9, it has to be A8 because it's this problem of the same row, and the interest. Okay. Then now, let's try delete these cells, and let's try a little differently. I'm going to highlight this. Okay. This time, we can find future value directly. We can, because future value is what? P times 1 plus R times T, right? But the process to arrive at this, we know how we got there, right? So let's do this. P times, so it's 1 plus R times T. Of course, we will get to the same result as row A, and there you go. Then, what about this? What about the interest? Well, if interest is the difference between the future value and principal, isn't that right? In other words, you got the future value this way, right? If you got to the future value this way, and it's principal plus interest, right? So then interest, if you know the future value and principal, interest is simply the difference between the two, isn't it right? So there you go. So we got to the same result. Now, what about $800 principal, 12% interest, 50 years? Well, it's the same formula. So you might think, oh, I'm going to build that formula in there. Yes, you can build the same formula in there, but there's no need. You have already done it. Why? This is the formula, right? So all you need to do is just copy and paste that formula. Okay, now that makes that once I copy and pasted it down, right? These cells also populated because there's a it's replicating, right? I put already equal to E11. This is E11. So if this cell is already the cell is already commanded to be equal to this, right? E12 is already determined to be equal to E11. So whatever is happening here will be also reflected here, right? But let's retrace how I copied and pasted. Now, there are two ways you can copy and paste. First of all, just like any Microsoft, document or a Microsoft, product, right, software, you can go to Home, use the copy icon, and once you copy it, you can highlight the range to copy, area to copy, and then place, select and hit paste, and then it gets pasted, or it gets copied. Or when you select the cell, okay, let me get out of there first. If I select the cell, you will notice, let me zoom in. You will increase that the borderline is highlighted, and you will notice that the this corner of the borderline is broken. It's a small square, right? In other words, that I call this southeast corner, right? Because that's north, east, south, right? West, southeast corner. And when you move the mouse around and when the cursor is hovering above it, it's just fat white cross, thick white cross, right? But when you bring the cursor on the border, the cursor turns into a thin arrow-headed cross. Thin arrow-headed cross is a sign, it's a confirmation that Excel is ready to move that cell. Okay, that's for moving, and we're not going to use that. So you can, drag it and move it. Now, but if you bring the cursor to this corner, right onto that square dot, the cursor turns into a thin black cross. That means Excel is ready to copy and paste. All you need to do is gently hold down the left mouse button hold down left mouse button and just drag it down. Okay, and then the formula is copied. See, everything on the spreadsheet, when you copy, as long as it's not just numerical data, but just as long as it's a formula, it's the formula that gets copied, not the number on the surface. Number on the surface is the result of the workings of that formula, right? So it's not the formula, it's not the number on the surface we want to copy, it's the formula we want to copy. You can copy it that way. Another thing is, this is really wonderful. Why? What is so wonderful about it? Well, if you highlight these two cells, and it contains formula here too, because it's, this minus this. If you select both, and then you can drag down both, and right, both columns get copied, right? So this is something wonderful about Excel. The beauty of Excel is not only this, and this way you can save a lot of time, because you don't have to solve the same pattern, the problem of the same pattern, not the same problem, but the problems of the same pattern, without solving all over again, without solving on it. You can replicate your own formula over and over. It's not plagiarism, because you're not copying somebody else's work. You're copying your own work, and there's nothing wrong with it, right? All right. So that's it for this segment of the video, right? I will see you in the next video. Stop recording.